What's going on, guys? Ben from JK Gear and Gadgets. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. It is time to go ahead and lift the front of the Jeep just a little bit. We're going to do that by installing a front leveling kit. I've actually been running 35s on the factory Rubicon suspension for a while now. It works good, but I do want to add a little bit of lift up front. For one, to see how it looks. Two, I know a lot of people are probably interested on how to do it. And three, give us a little bit more clearance. Luckily, leveling kits are really easy to install. They're actually really affordable compared to other lift kits, and they don't really change too much of how the Jeep rides. So let's see what we went with. Well, two things here. Ignore this box right now. The first thing we're taking a look at is the 1.5-inch lift from Teraflex. Now, the great thing about this leveling kit is that it actually gives us the option to either run just a single 1-inch spacer on top of the spring, or we can add the other 1/2-inch puck to give us a 1.5-inch lift. Now, I personally am gonna go with the full 1.5-inch. That's gonna make this Jeep completely level, zero rake in the rear. Now, if you're somebody that actually uses this for truck activities, whether you're hauling or have a lot of weight in the bed, you might only wanna do 1 inch. Otherwise, you're gonna kind of get that Carolina squat look going on whenever you have weight in the bed. And you might like that look. Personally, I don't like that look. So we're gonna stick with 1.5 and see how it does. This kit comes with spacers for both sides, of course, some stickers and bump stops, little bump stop extensions, so we can bump up a tire size if you want. Comes with all the hardware we're gonna need, but as you can tell, it's a pretty basic kit and only cost about $100, so that's not bad. Now, what we have here is something that you really don't need this for a budget boost or front leveling kit install, but I'm excited to do a review on these and see how they work. These are the Teraflex Falcon Shocks. These are the monotube design. They actually have not came out with the Falcon 3.3s or the adjustable shocks yet, but these are tuned and valved just for the Jeep Gladiator. So I'm excited to see how they ride and compare against the Rubicon Fox shocks. So we'll be installing these as well, and I'm excited to see how these ride. So we'll get back to that later. Let's start off by going through and showing you how to install this leveling kit. Now, I will say that Teraflex, they actually give us step-by-step instructions with this kit, and they already have a video on YouTube step-by-step on how to install these. So our install video on this is gonna be pretty quick. We're gonna hop through it, but mostly I'm excited to see what this looks like leveled out and see if we can fit some 37s on it. We'll see. Let's get started. First thing we're gonna do is grab our jack and jack stands, jack up the Jeep from the axle, and place these two stands under each side of the frame. And remove the wheels and tires. Grab an 18mm wrench and socket and disconnect our lower shock bolt. If you plan on changing out your shocks, now's the time to go ahead and pull the upper shock bolt out too. Remove the 18mm bolt on our sway bar link. And now we are going to go ahead and loosen up our track bar bolt, 21mm. Now, it is a good idea to go ahead and loosen up all of our control arm bolts, just so once we raise the Jeep, all those bushings aren't in a bind. We can either do that now or after. It's up to you. We're now going to come over here to our control arm and remove this 15mm nut that is holding our little retainer bracket on. Go ahead and pop that off. A little tip for you guys, when you're doing lifts and installs, what I like to do is reinstall the bolts and nuts back where they were, just so we don't get them mixed up or misplaced in the future. Now, with everything disconnected, we are going to watch these lines, anything attached to the axle before we lower it down, but we're supported on the frame. That tire over there is still on. We're going to lower this jack just enough to drop the axle down so this spring becomes loose. Still got plenty of room in these lines. We're good. Had a nut fall from somewhere. Not sure where that nut just came from. That's a little troubling. What in the world? We'll have to figure that out. The axle is completely free hanging, so as you can tell, we can push it down we have plenty of room in these lines. So what I'm gonna do is push it down and just pop the spring right on out of here. Try to twist it out. All right, spring is out of there. Right now is one of those times where I really wish I had an indoor garage with AC and a nice lift. Oh man, one day. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and finish up this project. It's not too long. We're gonna go ahead and pull this factory rubber isolator off and reinstall our new little coil spring spacers. We're gonna go ahead and decide if we wanna do the full 1.5 inches or just go with 1 inch. Now there's 2 little tabs right here on the coil spring spacer. We are going to line those up until they pop into the holes in the coil bucket. Reinstall our isolator once again into the tabs on the spacer. Grab our spring, get it up in here just so it doesn't come flopping out. Reline them up again, just like that. I'm gonna see if I can get this on by myself. There we go. A little bit of pressure does the trick. So make sure all these are still lined up in there. Turn our spring until it lines up in the coil pad down here. We're now gonna grab our bump stop, slide it in the coil spring, and grab the hardware for our bump stop. Grab our nut and our little wrench that they provide us, and kind of snake it up under the coil pad in here. This can be pretty difficult. I've been messing around with this for a while now, and it's hard to line up just because it don't really give you too much room, and that's, you know, not Teraflex's fault. It's just the design of the coil pad down here. Now you can use a normal Allen wrench. I find it easier, well, maybe, to get a little ratchet. My recommendation for Teraflex is to make this bolt a little bit shorter, because this is ridiculous. This is a lot of threading. This process sucks right now. All right, we're done. Holy crap. We do want to make sure that we save this tool in case we ever need to remove these in the future, whether it's for a different lift or adding more bump stop extensions or taking them away. Now that everything is put together back in here, we have our bump stops in, we have our coil spring and our new leveling kit spacers. It's time to go ahead and put the Falcon Shocks in. But I want to compare them against the Fox factory Rubicon shocks real quick. So I actually got the Falcon Shocks that were designed for a 0 to 1.5 inch lift. They also sell these to 2.5 or 3 inches of lift. I decided to just go with the factory spec Falcon Shocks for now. In the future, once we actually put an actual lift kit on this, we'll probably go with some different shocks. But these are gonna work perfect with our leveling kit. So as you can tell, the eyelets are lined up. They do have a little more travel than the factory Fox shocks. And I did notice that the outside diameter of the shock body itself is wider, and the shock shafts themselves are thicker. It's definitely hard to show you on camera, but this does look to be a very well-made shock. It says right there JT front, so we know this is going on the front with the logo facing out. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna throw this up in there, get that top bolt started, and then come down here and tighten up the bottom. With the top bolt started, we have to jack up the axle a little bit so we can start our lower shock mount. Now, one thing on the Falcon shocks is they are offset down here in the bottom. See, it has a little bit offset of that eyelet. You want that offset facing forward so we have clearance for this shock on the coil buckets. After we have our spring and shock reinstalled, we're going to tighten down both the shock bolts, come back, reattach our sway bar link and that nut that we took off our control arm. Now, this is the mystery nut that dropped earlier. I have no idea where it came from. Everything else is back in place. I have no idea. I looked around, I could not find where this possibly could have came from. It does look like an extra shock bolt. It's the same thread and pitch, so I have no idea. I'm gonna save it. Hopefully it was just left over from the manufacturing process, but this side is done. All we have left to do is throw the wheel and tire back on this side and then move to the other side. The only thing I did leave loose is this track bar bolt right there. That way, once both sides are complete, we'll come back and tighten that back up. So as you guys can tell, it's really not that hard of a project. You can do this at home, but man, it is hot today. Way too hot to be out here doing this. It's like Oh, it's hot. But we are gonna work on this side next. I'm gonna speed through this install real quick, knock it out so we can see what this Jeep looks like. And no, it's not gonna sit this high, even though that does look really good. But I'm gonna save this bolt for later, just in case it did come from something important. All right, reinstall that there, take that off, and do the same thing that we just did on the front. We have everything done on the front, and as you can tell, it is sitting nice and level. It might be a little bit higher in the front, it's hard to tell, but then again, my driveway isn't exactly level and it's kind of sideways. But one thing I really want to stress is don't forget to torque down your track bar bolt right up there. Once we're done, that little guy, torque it down. But we have plenty of room for our 35s now. That is beautiful. And soon, I can't wait to show you guys these 37s. Yeah, they're gonna be sick. So I don't know if the leveling kit will be enough for 37s, but we will see. Before we actually throw the 37s on there, I want to take this thing off-road with the 35s and the leveling kit and see how it does off-road. But we have a mighty storm coming in, supposed to be some crazy thunderstorms. So let's go ahead and jack up the rear end and throw the rear Falcon Shocks on. Once again, we do get a little bit longer travel, which is awesome with these new shocks. So we are just going to do the exact opposite of our disassembly. So I have the axle hanging as low as it goes. Right now it's limited by the sway bar, but I think that might be enough. What I'm gonna do is push the shock up a little bit and try to stab this bolt through. Got it in. All we have left to do is tighten them back up. Finally, all 4 Falcon Shocks are installed, and we are now sitting 1.5 inches higher in the front, and my helper now decides to come out.
I come out when all the work is done.
Exactly. How's it look? What do you think?
It looks really good. You can tell the front is high, sitting higher, or it's now even, at least with the back. And the 35s are still looking good on it. I'm excited to wheel it this weekend because we're going to Uwharrie to test out the 35s because we haven't done that yet.
Because we are moving up to 37s. But we are going back to Uwharrie to test this out. Uwharrie is definitely not the hardest place. It's not the most fun place to wheel, but it is where we originally tested out the Gladiator when it was stock. So it'd be kind of unfair to test it out stock somewhere, then test out with 35s in a different location. So we're gonna go right back to the first place we tested it and see how much of a difference 35s actually make with the Gladiator. So I'm excited. You excited?
So excited.
Oh, she is not excited.
I'm excited.
But it definitely looks good. It's definitely level. I was kind of worried that it would have that Carolina squat going on, but that is enough talking. I'm still gonna finish up this review tomorrow.
Yeah,
I gotta drive around with the Falcon Shocks.
I don't get to test them out until tomorrow night, so.
Yeah, she won't be, she has to work tomorrow. I get off early tomorrow. So I'm gonna drive this to work, home from work, and then around the roads, see how the Teraflex Falcon Shocks do compared to the Rubicon Shocks. The Rubicon Shocks were pretty good, but they were like a little bit bouncy, a little head bobbly.
I'll give you my review. I'm extra picky.
Yeah, whenever we're wheeling, I'll let her talk about them. But I loved the Rubicon Shocks and suspension, so I'm excited to see how the Falcons do. They're gonna have to hold their weight to compete with the Rubicon Shocks. So we will see tomorrow, and we'll finish up this review and see how it rides, how it handles. And we'll take it to a nice flat parking lot to see how exactly it looks. Because my driveway is like slanted this way, all over. So we really can't see how exactly level it is. So that is enough talking for tonight. We're gonna go take the kids on a walk once again before it starts storming. That's my luck. That's my luck. Like, if I rush the install, it's not gonna rain. And then if I take my time on the install,
I have to hear about how it started raining and ruined his install.
Exactly, it would have started raining.
Plastic.
If I didn't have bad luck, wouldn't have any luck at all. So that is enough for tonight. See you guys tomorrow. I just got off work. I drove the truck in to work this morning and home from work. Well, of course, because I drove to work. But so far, I will say that the leveling kit and the Falcon Shocks ride amazing. Honestly, a little bit better than stock, but we will get back to that in a minute. We'll take this for a ride and I'll tell you, my feelings on these shocks and why I like them. But first, let's see what the leveling kit looks like now that we're on some flat ground. So as you can tell, it definitely, it raised the front 1.5 inches clearly, but does it leave a little bit of the factory rake? A little bit. It's hard to pick it up on this GoPro, kind of like the wide angle fisheye lens, but it's still about 1/4 inch higher in the bed. So, if we load down the bed, yes, it will squat a little bit, but honestly, this just looks amazing. Definitely finishes the Jeep off, gives it a real good look. And for 35s on a Rubicon, we now have plenty of clearance here in the wheel well. So that was my big thing, is before we actually test this off-road with 35s, I wanted to make sure that we had plenty of clearance room and we weren't gonna start, rubbing the fenders and all that kind of stuff when we go to take this off-road. So like me and Cassie mentioned, we are going down to Greensboro, or we're going back home to visit my mom, and we're gonna hit Uwharrie while we're down there. That's where we tested out stock, and that's where we're gonna test it out with 35s before we go to 37s. And in the future, we will be putting an actual lift kit on there, with new springs, new shocks, new control arms, track bars, all that stuff. But for now, the leveling kit rides really nice. It looks even cooler. And honestly, the Falcon Shocks are amazing. Let's go hit the road and talk about those for a second. Let's talk about the Teraflex Falcon Shocks and how they ride. So right now, the only option they have for the Gladiator is their monotube design. They will be coming out with the Falcon 3.3s, the ones with the adjustable knobs and everything, to kind of change the settings up a little bit. But I'll go ahead and say I prefer these shocks over the Fox factory Rubicon shocks. Now, there's a few things I really want to mention at first, and I don't want to dive too deep into this because it could be a whole video within itself. These are digressive shocks. So what that means is they actually call it a digressive linear shock. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it's a mix of both, because for shock valving, you have digressive shocks, you have linear shocks, and you'll also have a progressive shock. So a digressive shock kind of shines on the handling and ride quality aspect. So there are a few drawbacks. At low speeds, whether we're going 5 miles an hour up to 20, some of the bumps might seem a little bit harsh, a little bit stiff. But the trade-off is that at higher speeds, our ride quality, our handling is a lot better. So right now, I can make some really, really sharp maneuvers, and the Jeep just feels planted. It's not loose. There's not much body roll at all. And man, this is just, the Jeep handles amazing. I probably should not have been doing that on a road, but there was nobody coming. I will say that before, with the Fox shocks, my head was constantly bobbing. Turns definitely induced some body roll, and these shocks just make the Jeep feel really, really well planted to the ground. Like I mentioned, the trade-off and most people's concern is that when they're going slow, the shocks feel a little stiff. Personally, I would rather have a better handling aspect opposed to just having a nice cushy ride over slow bumps. I'll try to make another video in the future talking about all the differences of a digressive shock, a linear shock, and a progressive shock. But honestly, for most people's needs, a digressive shock is gonna ride well, it's gonna handle really well on the road, and still perform well off-road. So these shocks, I definitely say, are worth it. They're a lot better overall than the Fox shocks. I really did like the Fox shocks too, so that's saying something. But overall, the lift itself, the leveling kit, does not really make it ride any different. And that's one thing I will say, is that if you are looking to do a leveling kit or spacer lift, the max I would recommend is 1.5 inches. Beyond that, we're gonna start having to get other adjustable components, track bar, control arms, all that stuff. 1.5 inches is probably the max I'd go for a spacer lift and still retain the factory ride. So I think that's gonna close out this video, guys. Like I mentioned, we're gonna be taking this off-road this weekend, so tomorrow. I still really want to plan an off-road trip and a big get-together for everybody that watches the channel. Anybody who wants to come wheel with us, I am working on that. But this next video, we're just gonna play around with the Gladiator and see how it does. Let's take a nice little turn here. Let's see. Oh, this, yeah. Oh, that cold air intake sounds so nice. So you see what I'm saying? The Jeep drives amazing. It's almost like a little sports car with these shocks. So I'm done talking, guys. Thanks for watching. Like always, smash that thumbs up button. Please hit the thumbs up button. Go down in the comments. Let me know what you think about these shocks. I mean, I guess not many people have these. I don't know. Am I the first person to have these? I don't even know. But if you're looking for a little quick leveling kit budget boost, check out the Teraflex 1.5-inch lift. And if you're looking for shocks to replace your sport shocks or your Rubicon shocks, I would definitely take a look at the Falcon series. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, see you later. I don't know where I am. I guess I should turn around.